I could build a spaceship.
Hello and welcome to Space Doc Jury, Minisode, blah 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 blah.
Alpha 62.
Alpha 62009. Oh shit! I've detonated the Enterprise.
Code 1A, 2B, 3.
1A. Shit. Anyway, hello. I'm Lee.
Hi, Peter.
And I'm Andy.
And this minisode, while I'm eating a cake with bacon in it, which is highly unprofessional for a minisode.
I don't know. I say that's about the level we're at, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's about the level we're at. We're going to talk
Can I have your hog lumps now?
Yeah, you can have your hog lumps. Go straight for it. We're going to be talking about fighters. Now, fighters is one of those things where they kind of, a couple of exceptional ones kind of tip over into our scoring system, and then most of them stay out because they can't really transport between planets. So they get disqualified automatically. However, they are still spaceships and they are still part of universes that we talk about. So we thought, why not have a minisode that does fighters and talks about them? Which ones do you like? Which ones do you hate? You know, the usual stuff. And so, yeah, here we are, talking about fighters. Not that we've actually started talking about fighters. I'm talking about fighters, but there you go.
Yeah.
Just bear with
it's
me.
very semantics, yes. We were just waiting for you to finish your cake, basically.
Yeah, okay, that's fair enough. Very nice. Bacon and maple. I recommend it. Anyway, so I'm going to start by asking a question of you guys.
Okay.
You got fighters, right? Space fighters.
Space fighters.
Do we count within that bombers?
I think so.
Yeah? They don't count as a different class of ship, different class of vessel?
Well, I think when we say fighters, as in space fighters, we're really saying armed attack craft, in a sense. I mean, even in today with and you'll excuse me while I just put on my other nerdy military hat, you have things like the F-35, which are described as an attack fighter because they can both shoot down other aircraft but deliver bombs and ordnance. So we're already right now kind of blurring that lines between what's a fighter and what's a bomber. And that's just going to keep going into the future. You will always have something which is, you know, a specialised, it's just meant to do this or it's just meant to do that. But you know, I think there's so much crossover with it, you know, fine, I just talk about whatever. Okay. That is my opinion anyway.
Yeah, okay. What about you, Pete? What do you think? You agree?
I guess so, yeah. I mean, I'm trying to think of examples of bombers, really.
Well,
I mean,
a Y-wing.
Exactly, which primarily I tended to think of as a fighter. Anyway, I think it was only later on I discovered that actually it was a bomber. I mean...
Well, that's true.
It's not a massive distinction made in the actual film, let's face it, is there?
No, that's very true. Oh.
It's from that lovely thing called the expanded universe, which now no longer counts.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Okay, then. Well, let's just get down to it then, I guess. What would you say is the most ideal thing for a fighter to be? I mean, apart from like a one-man vessel, what is it that you look for in a really good fighter? And cite an example, Pete.
I guess. Well, I was trying to think of different films and TV series that have fighters in it, and there aren't as many as you actually think. And my thinking for that is possibly because everybody's in the shadow of Star Wars.
Yeah.
And Star Wars, you know, kind of introduced the idea of a sci-fi dogfight, didn't it? I mean, he famously edited in clips of World War II dogfights.
Yeah, the battle
when he was putting the cut together. Exactly. So that's kind of what got things started, and everybody else, you know, very much in their shadow. And part of the reason I think for that is the fighters in Star Wars have very distinctive profiles and very simple profiles as well. So a schoolchild can draw an X-wing quite easily. It's an X. It looks like an X-wing. Fantastic. Even an idiot like me can draw an X-wing. Likewise, TIE fighter, not exactly difficult to pull off a reasonable-looking TIE fighter that other people could recognise is a TIE fighter. Yeah. So basically, there's the sort of standards you're then comparing, you know, everything else to, really.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Well, what about you, Andy? What do you think?
Well, I mean, for myself, what I want out of my space fighters, as you were, is something which doesn't look like a plane in space. Because, things like Vipers, I like the Vipers, back the classic ones, but, I mean, they really do just look like a type of plane.
It's a problem I have with them as well, yes.
Yeah. Whereas for myself, I think my favourite starfighter of them all is the Star Fury from Babylon 5. Because, yes, you've got distinct wings there, but, it doesn't look like anything we have here. And it's got the big engines, the forwards and backwards and everything like that. And, you've got those thrusters. And just the way it behaved as well. You're flying forwards, a little squirt of the engines. You're flying backwards, and I'm going to shoot you now. Ha, ha, ha. And I always used to love that, which was just fantastic. I mean, again, I like the Star Wars fighters are iconic. We love the X-Wing. Lock has foils in attack position and all that sort of thing. TIE fighters as well, nothing looks like those. But with the X-Wings especially, again, it's a long nose, it's a cockpit, it's wings. It's instantly recognisable as a plane or something like that. So with the Babylon 5 Star Furies, they're just that little bit different and that will only work in space. That is cool.
Yeah.
Newtonian physics.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing I always note with fighters myself is the fact that, they do look like planes, and the reason for that is that it's kind of a visual shorthand. Straight away, you're seeing a one-man ship with scale and wings, and it's it can fly on the surface, it can fly in space, and for me that's always been a key element of fighters, that they do have wings, because they do that does literally shortcut an entire dialogue of what the hell is this? Is it too big? Is it too small? You've got a cockpit and wings. Straight away, you know where you are, if you know what I mean.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I'll tell you the one that comes to mind with me, and it's not a sort of really as well-known one, but the hammerheads from Space Above and Beyond.
Oh, yes.
Oh, right. Yes.
The old
I did a bit
Saratoga.
of Google searching on them earlier.
Yeah. And see, those, I mean, technically, they don't, there's not much to discern them from, say, the Thunderbolts from Babylon 5, except those sort of front wings, those little stabilizers. And to me, that's kind of nice. I like that because it does look functional. Yeah, okay, fine. Wings in space mean nothing, but frankly, if it goes down to the atmosphere, you stand more chance of seeing that and going, yeah, that makes sense, than if you see if you do see something like a B5, Star Fury. So it's kind of, for me, a fighter is always a bit multifunctional. It's never just in space, which is one thing that I think it kind of is kind of one of the things that I always enjoy about fighters, because they kind of always look, their kind of primary objective seems to be to look cool and carry a lot of guns.
Pretty much, yeah. That seems to be the main go-to. I mean, I don't know about with Pete, but certainly you, Lee, I'm sure, have played a lot of space games with fighters where you're flying around and things like Free Space. I love the fighters you get in Free Space. Mostly the first version and the second version, but it's besides the point. But you've got such a nice range of the fighters there, and each of them has its own distinct shape, but it's still in that world. Plus, you get to fly it, which is awesome.
Well, yeah, you can never go wrong with actually playing a game where you can actually fly these things. That's always handy.
I mean, the old X-Wing v TIE Fighter games and everything. TIE Fighter, yes, I'm in the service of the Empire.
Yeah, bring it on.
Yes.
So, sorry, Pete, you sounded like you were going to say something there.
No, I was just agreeing. In terms of the computer gaming, I mean, the main one I played was Star Wars Battlefront, where you could sort of hop in a TIE fighter and go flying off, and then almost immediately crash again.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I tell you what, seeing as Star Wars seems to be the sort of touchstone. I mean, let's go through a few. I mean, the one I always find I should like more, but I don't, is the Naboo starfighters. What do you think of those?
I kind of like them. I like the how do you describe the design aesthetic, but
they're almost like
heavy,
World War II fighters. That's how they always look like Spitfires to me.
But with more of a sort of Flash Gordon vibe to them, haven't they? Those pointy bits.
Lots of chrome and front heavy.
I do quite like. I mean, as much as I'm not a great fan of the Phantom Menace, obviously, I do quite like those ships. I mean, I did get one fairly quickly because I was working in a toy shop at the time and could pick one up with a discount. And this was before I saw the film as well. I put aside all the figures,
Nice.
and I got myself one of the ships, and then all the figures I put aside once I'd seen the film. It's like, yeah, I think I'll put those back on the shelf now.
Yeah, I think I'll save myself a few quid. But okay, well then moving forward, I mean, what about the Jedi Starfighters, the first version, which we see, which looks like
the very first one, the triangle one?
Yeah, the triangular one with the little hyperdrive ring that you...
I always liked the hyperdrive ring. I thought that was a cool little touch. But I mean, we've discussed this briefly in another Minisode, I think it is. I much prefer the ones you get in Revenge of the Sith with the TIE Fighter-esque cockpit somewhere with the little flip-up wings. I just, for myself, I find those just a bit more visually interesting than the flying triangle. I know, I know that the first Jedi Starfighter is kind of harking towards the A-wing.
Yeah.
And obviously the next one's trying to hark towards the TIE craft and so forth. So it's kind of interesting that way. But
there were the toys for the original one. They did have little flippy TIE Fighter wings. They're very tiny.
They did.
You never see them in the film, but
Yeah, they did, because that's they were built off of the original designs. If you get the Art of Star Wars, Art of Attack of the Clones, you actually see the designs with those side wings on, and they are in there. You can see the panels for them in the film, but they never get actually opened,
used. Yeah,
you never see them used. It's almost like they suddenly just thought, not really good, no need for it.
On the whole, I'm not a fan of a lot of the fighter designs in the prequels because they're trying very hard to retroactively give it a design lineage to stuff you see later on.
Yeah.
And a lot of them, it's a bit forced, you know? You've got those V-wings in Revenge of the Sith, which just looked a bit pants. You had they're effectively pre-X-wings, which the clones are flying again during Revenge of the Sith with the free wings.
Fighters.
Yeah, again, they're kind of interesting again, but they seemed too forced, too effectively trying too hard, to coin a phrase from Down, and just didn't. Because the one thing I'll say about the Naboo Starfighters is they didn't look like anything else. They looked like something from, if I can quote from Obi-Wan, a more civilized age.
Yeah,
you know, it's that sort of thing. You know, it's a regal. It's kind of a, it's more aesthetics over function. Whereas once you get towards A New Hope and the Galactic Civil War, now it's a case of function over form. And I kind of like that. And that just kind of got lost straight after The Phantom Menace.
Yeah.
Understandable. I mean, outside of the prequels, though, I mean, I think my favourite Star Wars starfighters, I know this is a controversial one, but for me, I've always liked the B-Wings. I don't like the B-Wings when they're flying with the long bit straight down, but I always liked it when the cockpit was off to one side and the long bit was out to the side, like you saw in that post with the Star Destroyer being blown up. Yeah. I always thought that was a kind of cool look to it. And it was fantastic in that Rebels episode, which was just so cool.
Yeah, well, that's someone just giving a love letter to that ship. I mean, that's all that was. Have you seen that episode, Pete, by the way?
I haven't,
No, basically, just so you know, without spoiling it, but basically, it's a fighter, it's the first test of a B-Wing. And it doesn't quite work, but it's like a super overpowered bomber.
Does the pilot get sick?
Well, exactly. It is a silly design. I think it's the silliest design out there because keeping your cockpit standing still, being the engine, and flipping all the rest of your ship around it, it's like, no, bit silly.
It's different. I like it for being different, but
yeah, fair enough. I get that. I mean, for me, the fighters I always really liked in sort of like original trilogy, I loved those TIE interceptors because to me,
the TIE they are the best of the TIE craft.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Because that's like a natural evolution from Vader's craft and the TIE fighter up to that, and it's like that looks dangerous. That's the thing I always got from that. It looked dangerous, and that's another key element to any good fighter is it has to look like it's going to do you some damage. Mm-hmm. And yeah, as soon as you see that, it's like, oof, yeah, I like that.
Yeah, they're the fuckiest uppest, aren't they?
Yeah, the fuckiest uppest. Yeah, whereas the bloody TIE bombers just look like, like they were in the bloody games. They steer like bricks. They steer like bricks. They look like bricks, and basically don't last very long usually.
Yeah.
So I wasn't too.
And
keen
what do we
on-
think of the new fighter from the new film? Is it a Y or a V wing? I lose track of what it's supposed to be.
What ones? The
Is it a U or V? Is it U wing?
From Rogue One.
From Rogue One.
Yeah.
That's meant to be a dropship, I think. It's meant to be more along the lines of those
And it's a
dropships that we saw from.
It's a prelude to a Y-wing, isn't it?
No, it's not a prelude to a Y-wing. It's more like you remember in Attack of the Clones, you had those dropships which dropped the troops in.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Because it's meant to drop the troops on that's what brings the troops down, and they jump out of that to go and do the ground attack.
It's the one that brings all the troops to the yard.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
And damn right, it's better than yours.
Yeah, it could teach you, but it'd have to charge. Yeah, I mean, not to sort of stay on Star Wars for too long, but I have to say their predilection for naming everything A,
With a
B,
letter.
C,
Yeah.
D, E, was fine when it was just like X-wing and A-wing, and maybe the B-wing for blades and Y-wing because it had a reason. But when it started getting into the extended universe, and it's like here's the F-wing and the XU wing and the as soon as they start
And they
doing
don't
that.
even use our alphabet. They use that basic thing
Yeah,
with
it's
a bloody...
Subesh, or whatever it's called. Yeah, that language. It's like, so how did you come up with the word B when you're
Shut up, that's why.
when everyone's galactic language barely has a letter that's even recognisable, let alone
It's a wing.
yeah, it's the yeah, brilliant. Thanks for that. I'll have 3 of them. Yeah, moving away from Star Wars though, what about the old Thunder Fighter from Buck Rogers?
Hey, yeah, that's a lovely design. That is.
Because I think that's lovely.
Nothing to do with a certain colonel piloting there, I'm sure.
We can't see her in the fighter, mate.
Obviously not looking close enough.
I hadn't realised they actually did. I mean, I had a little dinky toy of it, but apparently they did like Star Wars style. There were a few Star Wars 3 1/4 inch figures, Buck Rogers figures, and they did that fighter as well. And it looks incredibly cheap and crappy. There's no wonder they didn't take off. But I would have loved one of those as a kid.
Yeah.
I think it's great. I love the design. And I mean, if we're talking about this, we may as well also just kind of cross-pollinate over to the Viper as well, because this was the original design for the Viper, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And then they went over to the 3-engined one at the same time. But they both just work so well. And with both the Viper and with the Thunder Fighter, I love the fact they launch through those catapults, which is cool. The whole one.
Yeah.
They hit the thrust button, the head goes back against the headrest, and you got the bloody red and yellow lights before they go. Whoo!
Yeah. Yeah, kind of thing as you fly out
Yeah.
with your neck broken.
Well, yeah.
You go from 0 to 1 million miles an hour in a second. Yeah, not exactly. Okay, well, what about the well, just moving away from that for a second. What about the gliders? The ooh, what's that? Okay,
Those toys.
oh, there it is.
Ah.
You got ones with spikes. You see, the Matchbox one had a bar across between the spikes, so kids didn't jam them in their own eyes.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I've forgotten that.
Because I remember having one and spending years sort of slowly eroding those bits off. And then basically when I did
Just
I
so you
bent
could
them.
do that.
Yeah, no, just by the time I actually did it, I ended up breaking it and bending one of the prongs up, and it was like, oh, no, that's the end of that then. But my damaged childhood aside, let's move on. I mean, what about the gliders from Stargate, the Manta Ray X-104s? Do you know much tapping?
Yeah,
Tap?
no idea what these are.
I know the Death Gliders, which were the Gould
Yeah,
craft,
but the English,
and then-
but the nearly said the English, the humans.
Oh, the 302s.
Yeah, the 302s. Sorry, not
The F302s, yeah. Well, I mean, the story of the F302 was kind of interesting in that it kind of arced over the first 2 seasons. At first, it was merely a pair of Death Gliders they'd salvaged and kind of jumbled together, and that involved an episode where there was a recall to fly it back to Goa'uld space they didn't know about, and ended up flying out the solar system and not being able to control it, which was quite fun.
Yeah.
But then they rebuilt them just purely out of human tech, and they were kind of cool. I mean, they looked like a stealth craft with a forward-swept wing. It was kind of interesting. They were a little bit...
Dull?
Well, they were a bit dull, but they were a little bit of a Mary
Just a
Sue
wing.
sort of thing. It was a case of it could do
Yeah.
everything. It had it could fly in the atmosphere, it could fly in space, it could shoot. It was like the humans, Vitauri and all this, are brand new on the block, literally turned up, and they instantly make a space fighter better than anyone. It's just
of course, for reasons.
Yes. I mean, to be fair, the X-304s, the Daedalus class, went on to become more powerful than the Goa'uld ships, but whatever.
Powerful.
But yeah, I mean, the F-302s were kind of fun for the episodes where they were a key part of the episode, but they were never really a match for the gliders in terms of being cool and that presence. Nothing can match that scene in the film where those gliders come out of a pyramid for the first time and the sound they have.
Yeah.
It was kind of a high-pitched screech, and then the way that the staff weapons opened, they kind of popped up and you had the little crackle of energy down there.
Yeah.
That was what was cool.
Yeah. Okie dokie. Right then. Well,
and nice and colourful too.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. They were very colourful.
Amory would approve. They've got a bit of purple on them.
Oh well, there you go. Okay, well let's go back in time a little bit now, and go back to the land of Jerry of the Anderson, and go to the show UFO with the Shadow Interceptor. How do we feel about these little puppies?
Let me strap a bomb to my head and go charging at the enemy.
Well, of course, if you're gonna strap a bomb anywhere.
I'm not the enemy to death.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a Red Dwarf thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm going to nut him. Yeah, I'm taking the silence from Andy means he's still googling it.
Oh, it's UFO. I know Thunderbirds, I know Stingray, I know a little about Joe 90, and I know a bit about Thunderhawks. That is the extent of my and Space 1999. That's the extent of my Jerry Anderson.
Okay. Well,
education, as it were.
Allow me to furnish you with an image. This should tell you all you need to know, really.
Okay.
Basically, they were fighters that were based on the moon. They were space fighters, and they had little machine guns and what have you, and they flew around using like retro thrusters on the sides, which you can see just behind the pilot.
Right.
But the big bit on the front is one big almighty missile. So essentially, apart from like some machine guns, this was a one-shot deal with these fighters.
And it was stored in the most idiotic place.
Yeah,
ever.
and if you got a massive amount of high explosives sitting on your front nose, is probably not the best.
Don't let Alan fly it ever.
No.
There's a question: do the Eagles count as fighters?
No, but there were fighter craft versions of those, and I shall Google them up while you talk amongst yourselves.
I think were they called the Hawk? Was it? It's the yellow-ish looking.
There was the Hawk.
Yeah,
there was the Hawk, which was basically an armed eagle.
Okay.
On Space 1999 fighters, but there was there was one that just looked like the head of an eagle. And it was literally the head of an eagle, and it had like a little tiny compartment behind it. But the Hawks are the sort of general one,
right?
The bright orange blooming things, which are bloody ugly, to be honest. If I'm honest, it looks like these are terrible CGI renditions of them. But the Hawk was never really used that often, primarily because I think they only sort of brought them in sort of like the third season, second season, by which time it was all pretty much over and done with. But
okay, yes, I see the Hawk. So that's the Hawk, yeah.
That's the Hawk.
Right.
Yeah, it's got a silly beak at the front.
Whether or not it counts as a fighter, I mean, it's like firstly, it's a two-man craft. Secondly, it's as big as a transport. So
I think just as I think space fighters or things like bombers can have more than one person. I think up to 3 would be okay, because you get situations where you have a pilot, co-pilot, and gunner.
See, for instance, Cylon Raiders.
The Cylon Raiders, there's also the Y-Wings are 2 people, 2-man.
Yep.
And I think the TIE bombers were supposed to be 2-man.
No, the TIEs weren't. It was the
TIE bombers, I meant. Not the fighters, the bombers.
Yeah. The TIE fighters in Force Awakens were, though.
They kind of squish them in, don't they?
Yeah, it's all of a sudden it's like, which I think is purely down to they'd written this script and someone would turn around and said, "Wait, how do we both get out in the same TIE fighter?" And you're like, fuck.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what about going back to what Pete just said? What about Cylon Raiders? What do you think of those?
I love those. Fantastic.
They're funny, but It's they're funny because you've got these three guys sitting on a bloody couch flying around the bloody thing, and I don't know. It might have been a
Which
robot
one of
chicken.
us is steering? I don't know.
I don't know which. I don't know if it was a
you.
robot chicken sketch or what it was, but I remember there was some comedy sketch taking the mick out of that seating configuration, and I just can't take it seriously after that. It's just. Yeah. You've got the one bloke sitting at the back doing fuck all while the two in front effectively flying.
Yeah.
I do like the ones in the new Battlestar, which were very cool.
But they were alive. They weren't really fighters. They were actually creatures.
No, they were fighters, but like as you say, though, they were alive. They were robotic organisms or whatever you want to call them. But it was a cool concept in of itself. It's a sense of, yes, if you have a robotic or automated enemy you're fighting, why does it need a crew? Why can't the fighters just effectively fly themselves? And also the way that in the show they were effectively treated as second-class Cylons by the more advanced models as well, which is interesting. There's interesting stuff. I mean, there's the whole episode when Starbuck crashes with one. Not Scar, it's...
No, Scar is the one that they have the showdown with.
Yeah, but it's the one where they crash and she basically has to lobotomize it and then flies it back, which was just cool and interesting.
And comes off and immediately needs a shower because she's completely covered in gook.
Yeah, exactly.
The only downside, I don't like the design particularly. It's something to do with that alien head, I think, that it's got. Which you can see why they've gone down that route. But it was interesting listening to that interview with Willie Stringer and him saying that actually that was kind of coming from the not the producers, but the people who owned the franchise, who were saying, it has to be different to the TV series. So the way they did it was to make the bad guys look different. Yeah. So that's why they changed the base stars as well.
Yeah.
But we still got to see the original one in Razor, which was fun, when you still see the three Cylons sitting there going, by your command.
Yeah. Well, they could do what they liked by that point, couldn't they?
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah. We're all good now, whatever, we're cool.
Yeah.
And again, I like the I like how they updated the Vipers for the new Battlestar with the Mark IIs, which were very reminiscent of the old ones from the original series. And then you had the Mark 7s, which were obviously a much more advanced-looking fighter, just straight off the get-go. But it was still instantly recognisable as a Viper. You just looked at it and said, yep, that's a Viper. Makes sense.
Yeah.
3 wings, 3 engines.
Yep. I mean, the one thing with the Type 7, the Type 7s that I really sort of... The one thing with the Type 7s I really didn't get was the fact that they all were immediately disabled by the Cylons in the first episode in less than a second with a single flash, and then it was something that the Cylons never did again whenever Lee Adama took his one out.
Oh, they do explain that in the pilot though, because Boltar has a hunch that it might be something to do with a upgrade, and then they rewrite all the CNC software at that point.
They take the Bluetooth out.
Yeah, basically, yeah. They do address that in the show and just say, it might have been nothing to do with me, but I heard it could have been this. Maybe we should fix that.
Yeah.
And off they go and do that. But yeah, you're right. But I mean, it was still an interesting way they did that, with the when the slit opened up and you got the vroom, 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 vroom. Glenn Larson's love of his red flashing light.
Yeah. Right, okay, well, let's go back in time again. Back to Buck Rogers and Hawk's Hawk.
Yeah.
How do we feel about this as a fighter craft?
Sad joke.
Wah, 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 wah.
Yeah, where's that sad trombone?
Yeah, I'll play it in a minute. Don't worry.
There's a great picture I found of it and the usual Buck Rogers style ship, and he's trying to grab it with his talons of
just grabbiness. Yeah.
Yeah, here we are. It's just one of the most appallingly put together CSO shots ever.
Love it. Here we go. Yeah.
It is.
Well,
it's
it was
not great.
It was. There it is. Look at that. It's like
it looks like it's crapping on it. Basically,
it does, doesn't it? Legs akimbo like that. Yeah,
it does look like a baby albatross learning to fly by falling off a cliff. There just happens to be a starfighter in the shot somewhere.
Yeah, it is not a great.
It's hard to say what's worse: the look of the ship or the look of Hawke himself with his feathered head.
Yeah, I wondered if those feathers went all the way down. Never mind.
Season 2.
Why?
But I've got something to segue off of a Hawk to another terrible fighter.
Go on.
The Peregrine fighters from fucking Star Trek.
Yeah, they ain't good. Even as a Star Trek fan, I can't defend those.
It is funny because for something for a universe so ultra over designed and over analyzed, the Peregrine fighters just seem like seem like a real last minute thing for the Star Trek.
They're terrible.
Universe.
I mean, whenever you saw the interiors, which was only I know they're just reusing the set from a shuttlecraft, what have you.
The runabout,
Yeah, but again, it's just like it doesn't. With a fighter, you expect a stick or some way to suggest that the pilot is in command of the craft, not just sitting there tapping the buttons on the console.
Yeah,
it just doesn't work at all.
Not at all.
And yeah, the Peregrine. I mean, Star Trek doesn't do fighters well as a rule, and it
very rarely does them. But when it does do them, badly.
Yeah, I don't think you really get a sense of any other species doing fighters, do you, Pete?
Well, the Cardassians have the Hideki, which vary in scale quite considerably. So by the time of the Dominion War, they've scaled them down, so they're fighters effectively, but they don't look good either, really. Imagine the Defiant without the style.
That's really hard to work out, that one.
Is the Peregrine the same one they had in Voyage, the Marquee one, or is that? I mean, they're still.
I think so. Yes,
but they're just Star Trek fighters are just not good.
Which is funny because I always remember when the first time you see them, I remember seeing them and you see them on Best of Both Worlds Part 2.
It's not that there's. I know what you're thinking of, but it's not those. There was something different. They're the Mars ships, which
Mars defense probes. They're just tiny bits of shit they found on the studio floor.
Well, I was going to say, but it didn't look that far out of what the Peregrines were, and it was just amazing. I remember seeing that video because I got the video when the episode came out, and I went, "Oh, fighters!" And then I clicked on it. I watched it. Sorry, I went, "Fighters, wicked!" And then like the ships literally flew past, and the ball cube just went. And carried on.
And the reason they were literally just parts from a submarine kit that they bashed together.
Yeah.
So that's why they moved so fast, because they didn't want you seeing them.
Yeah. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me, but it's just, oh God, that bloody Marquee ship.
This says all you need to know about Peregrine fighters.
Really? Uh-oh.
Comparing it to other fighters.
Oh, right. Okay. Fair enough. So, oh God.
And that includes your Space 1999 one, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But how
I'll
cool
put that on the
fucking
Facebook
Star
site.
Fury look there? Fucking Star Fury is fucking awesome.
To be quite honest, I have to say, well, yeah. So the Hawk's there; it does count. And then, interestingly, it counts those silly shuttles from V as a fighter as well. So I'm not saying that this is suspect, but I'm saying this list might be suspect.
Oh no, it's just thrown about.
The scale looks a bit out for the Viper compared. I always figured the Viper and the X-wing were about the same size, but this looks like the Viper's about half that size.
Yeah, the Viper was always kind of like about the size of a person, tightly fitted in. You always got the feeling there was a bit more space in the Viper. But okay. Well, I mean, what's the worst fighter you can think of? The worst one, the one that finally, when you see it, you just think, oh God, no.
I just kind of blew my load with a Peregrine, if I'm honest.
Oh, right.
That's a pretty shitty fighter right there.
That is a pretty shitty fighter. I mean, yeah, I can't really argue with that, actually. More I think about it, and more I'm looking at the bloody thing that you brought up with the Marquee vessel.
The Gunstars from the last Starfighter are just odd.
I don't mind them, though, to be honest.
Yeah, I take your meaning, though. It's not a nice-looking ship. No, but I tell you,
the ugliest I can think of.
Yeah, I mean, I tell you what I do like, which I was just going to come back to, was the Thunderbolt from Babylon 5. I really like those.
Yeah, Thunderbolts are fucking cool.
Those were the kind of but again, that was taking the Star Fury and doing what I was saying, turning it essentially into a proper jet fighter, especially with that Gatling gun thing on the front of its nose.
You had the Gatling, and you had the little winglets which would extend out when it was in the atmosphere, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. So for me,
no, absolutely. Cool. I mean, I love the Thunderbolt as well. They're cool, especially how when you first see them. I think it's in Severed Dreams for the first time.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, this is like, oh, it's a bigger thing. It's cool. And then you've also got the one where they're attacking Mars in the atmosphere, and you just got this. It's a nice kind of step progression. I mean, there's other great fighters in Babylon 5. You've got the Minbari, is Denials, is it the Minbari ones? Which are like the teardrop sort of shaped things, which again, they're very evocative of the Minbari design ethos. It's very kind of organic-y, fish-shaped, for lack of a better term. And again, with the Narns, you got those weird sort of tapazoid things. I mean, I think the worst fighters that you saw on Babylon 5 were the Raider ones, which were just triangles.
Oh, God. Yeah.
In season 1, it was just, just throw some triangles at it.
Well, actually, I was going to say the Shadows fighters, which just looked like Q*bert had fallen in some Hammerite with a Sonic the Hedgehog haircut.
It's true, but the way they were used was very cool. The ship would just spit out this ball, and then it was like you have when you see those things on the internet with like balls of spiders, and you poke it with a stick, and you've got spiders everywhere. It was like that, and it's just like it's nasty.
Okay, well,
I'm gonna send you the best fighter ever.
Go on.
This is the one that always sticks in my mind.
Okay, let's have a look. What the fuck is that?
They're the bad guys fighters from Starfleet. They're the Imperial fighters.
Starfleet.
But they're great buggy things. They're fantastic.
Great buggy things. It looks like someone's fake toenails have been given wings. Seriously, it's like.
Would you want to face that?
I don't know.
I don't want to face anything out of a Starfleet universe because it means I'm living in it.
Well, yeah, you wouldn't have to worry. You'd have no frame of reference other than being on strings on a really naff 70s Japanese TV show.
I'd
grab myself some scissors.
How does that look cool? There's not a straight edge on it. And what?
There is a cool fight which I remember from the youth. It's from an anime.
Go on.
Do you guys remember Robotech?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You had the Valkyries, which I know are just
F-14s.
They're 14 fighter crafts, but you later on got the space-based ones, which had the big, massive engine boosters on the top. And I just always remember watching those as a kid. I was just like, that was a fucking cool thing to see. Plus, they could turn into walking robots. And who doesn't want a walking robot?
Well, you don't want to be in
It looks
one.
like a transformer that's gone wrong. That's the problem.
Well, they actually used the model for the Jetfire Transformers. So if you used to buy the Jetfire Transformer from Generation 1, it was just the Macross ship repackaged.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I tell you what, I'm going to finish up for me with one which I guess is probably going to be one of those kind of roll your eyes and but I do like the SX3 Earth Alliance fighters from from Mass Effect, which I am sending through on there. Mm-hmm. They're basically quite simple looking ships, but I think they're really quite nice. And when you see them,
they're used fantastically in that Mass Effect 3 trailer.
Yeah, when you see them in the trailer for Mass Effect 3, when you see the kid playing with a toy and then it cuts to the actual ships going into battle, it's just so nice. And yeah, and then when they turn up at the end, I can't ruin it. But anyway, I quite like these because the thing with these ships is that they kind of show a heritage back to other fighters from all over the sci-fi universe. I mean, it's got that kind of touch of Buck Rogers about it. It's got big chunky great engines like an X-wing. There's so much about it that you kind of say, well, clearly there's a love for sci-fi in the design of that ship. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. No argument there.
Like that. It's all gone quiet over in Pete's corner, but that's fine.
It's very Mass Effect. There's a definite style.
Yeah, I know. Just don't call it a shrimp, you fool. Not after showing me a bunch of peas. Not after showing me a bunch of peas with some flappy wings. You have no leg to stand on.
I love those. I mean, again, it's a shame you never get an opportunity to fly one of those in the game, which would be great. There is, I'm just going to say this so we don't have people complaining saying we didn't mention it. We know Wing Commander is a game which exists and there are fighters in it, but to be perfectly honest, none of those particularly strike me as anything standing out. But that's just a personal opinion. There's nothing against it. There is a fighter in Halo Reach, and I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head.
What ones?
But I
Earth ones.
Yeah, it's the human fighter which launches from Reach, and you fly it. You kind of launch on the rocket.
Yeah, I know the ones. Yeah,
and then you fly around the. And it's just a fun little mission when you're flying around there and doing that mission. And the fighter itself, it doesn't look like anything overly special. It just looks like another human spacecraft. But it's just a lot of fun, and it's something a bit different in the Halo world compared to what you've seen. I found a picture. There you go. Still can't find out what the bloody thing's called though.
Yeah,
but it's that thing.
Yeah,
and again, it's a fun little mission. That's part of the thing, isn't it? With these space fighters, you've got the opportunity to fly them. Elite as well. Would they count as space fighters, don't they?
What's that? Yeah, those ones.
The Cobras and all that, yeah.
Yeah.
We went in the entire cast. You didn't mention it.
Yeah, well, the thing with Elite is that it's kind of how you configure your ship, because a Cobra are going to end up being a freighter. So,
okay,
you could end up basically flying a massive lumbering freighter because that's the way you've armed it up. But then you could start off with another ship called a Sidewinder, which is essentially as bog standard as those Raider fighters from from Babylon 5.
The
Sidewinder in Elite is probably the most boring looking fighter in all of sci-fi history. Hold on, I'll find one for you.
By the way, that Halo ship is called a Saber. I have found out what it was called.
Elite. Right, Elite. It helps if I can type Elite, really, to be honest. Man looks up thing on internet. Right, here you go. Now, Pete, I know you're easily excited with things like this, and a highly detailed spacecraft. But try and hold your excitement in as I show you the wonders that is the Sidewinder vessel. It's just a cube. It's just a cube with a sharp edge. That's all it is.
I think that was on Robot Wars this week, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It does look like Sir Kill-a-Lot.
Just had a big axe and it's there.
Yeah, exactly. And that's about as close as you get to an actual fighter. There are others. I guess probably the one that's funny enough is what it's named, but the other one in Elite is the Viper, which I shall find. But again, it's not exactly what I'd call innovative in its design. There's probably people going, no, don't take the Viper away. Well, actually, the Elite Dangerous Viper is kind of a bit more up to date and a bit more funky. But I'll give you both because you can see where it came from. So here's the Elite Dangerous one, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you who don't know, the Elite is Dangerous is a video game, spaceships. That's all you need to know. The Viper used to be a police vessel. So there you go. That looks all nice and lovely and shiny, doesn't it?
Chrome paint job, yeah, very nice.
Yeah, very good. But then let me show you what it used to look like. This is the funny bit, right? Elite Viper. There you go. And that
paper.
I can see the resemblance.
You can see the resemblance. Yeah. Essentially, for those of you who are not looking, obviously, and won't do any googling, essentially imagine a triangle with another triangle on top, with a triangle on top. And then maybe a triangle on top of that.
Imagine a slightly less bad version of the spaceship from the Asteroids game.
Yeah, exactly, with 3 triangles on top. That's essentially it. Anyway, so there you go. So what ones have we missed? What ones do you think we haven't been fair to? Which ones do you think there are better versions of? Which ones you want noticed? What fighters stand out for you? Well, get in contact with us. Get onto this Facebook group, which is facebook.com/groups/SpaceDocJury, or tell us on the Twitter feed, which is @SpaceDoc. @SpaceDocJury. And that's about it, really. I think for fighters, don't you think, guys?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I will say this though. I think of all of the aspects of science fiction and, the Star Trek, Star Wars, and all these things, I think space fighters are probably the least likely thing we're ever going to see.
Yeah.
It's visually cool, and like you said, it's a nice little shorthand, but it makes no fucking sense at all.
Yeah, I can't see anyone sitting in a cockpit for 6.5 months while they fly to Mars.
Yeah.
I just can't. But that's just me.
Get your ass to Mars.
Okay, and with that bombshell, we'll see you all next time. Take care and speak to you soon. Tatty bye.
Bye.
Ta-ra.
Space Doc Jury is a production of 3 Angry Beards for GeekPlanetOnline.com.